Hi, I'm Frank. In this video, I'm going to show you the proper way to check the health of your vehicle's battery. I'm going to be using an Ancel battery tester. Now there are some ways of checking the battery which are sort of quick and dirty ways. You can use a voltmeter to check the basic voltage of the battery. You can use the voltmeter to check the voltage drop as you try to start the car. And there are some ways that you can actually check the internal resistance with the voltmeter. None of them are as quick and easy as using a proper battery tester. And that's what we're going to be using for the car today. Now, I'm going to be using it on a Mercedes-Benz 2016 GLE. Now, the battery of this car is under the passenger's front seat. And there are some jump points underneath the hood. Now, in a couple other videos, I've shown you where I've evaluated a battery tester and used the jump points to test it. And that's not a proper way of doing it. If you really want to know the health, then you're going to have to connect the terminals directly to the battery itself. The jump points underneath the hood can give you the good voltage output of the battery. And then if you start the car, you can get a voltage drop. So you can do it that way, but that's not going to give you a good idea of what the health of the vehicle really, or the battery really is. And for that, you need to know the internal resistance. That becomes very important, as well as voltages, cranking voltages, and that sort of thing. And you're not going to get that accurate reading by using the jump points underneath the hood, because the cabling connecting the battery to those jump points adds additional resistance, and that's going to throw your reading off. Some meters won't even give you a good reading if you try using those jump points. So you're going to have to get to the battery terminals itself. For some cars like this Mercedes, that can be a little bit of a pain, but still relatively easily doable. So let's go ahead and do that. The Ancel battery tester gives you a number of great features. You can have just basically a quick test, the battery in the vehicle, which is what you're going to be using 95% of the time, out of vehicle, a waveform. You can review data, and then when connected with the USB, you can also print the data. So it's a nice little battery tester, easy to use, and we'll see how to do that. Before we get started, I want to go over some of the basics of batteries and what you want to look for. Now, obviously, the battery provides the power to start the engine. It will provide a certain amount of current required to turn the starter, which then turns over the engine. And then once the engine is started, then the alternator takes over and will provide electricity for the rest of the duration that you're driving. The battery follows Ohm's law, which is voltage equals amps times resistance. The voltage is going to be the 12 volts of your battery. The amps is going to be the current that the engine is going to require to turn it over. And resistance is going to be the internal resistance of the battery along with any other cabling that may exist between the battery and the starter. As the battery charges and discharges, there's an increase of sulfite particles that build up on the plates inside the battery. This is called sulfation. And that increase in the sulfite particles, that sulfation, causes resistance to increase in the battery. The internal resistance increases. Now, if the resistance increases, the amps available to provide power to the car decrease. And as that decreases, then it makes it so that at some point, the car is no longer able to turn on. Now, you get two things that happen. The car wants to draw amperage, but also at the same time, the voltage ends up dropping as a result of the increased resistance. So you have a drop in the voltage as the amperage draw tries to become higher and higher. So it's very important in the health of the battery to know what that internal resistance is, not only currently but over time. As I previously mentioned, here's the jump point in the car, and while I can certainly connect my battery tester to this point and into a chassis ground, it's going to power the meter and will give me voltage readings, but this is not the way to properly test it. I'm going to get an inaccurate internal resistance reading, and even though this is a little bit easier than getting under the seat, this is not going to be a good way. Now in the Mercedes, I've moved the front seat all the way forward and all the way up. Now for your particular car, if your battery is in a different remote location, you're going to need to find where that is. Now my battery is right underneath here, so we're going to take that out. Next, we have to take this out. There's a little clip under here. And then here under the seat is my battery. That's the negative terminal. The positive terminal is back there underneath that little red tab, which we're going to remove. And keep that aside because I'll be putting that back. So now we can connect our clips. Now you can see I'm connected to my positive and my negative terminals, and the tester has automatically turned on. You need to look at the label of the battery and check to see what it says. Now, this gives 95 amp hours. Sometimes this will be cold cranking amps, CCA. So there is a conversion between amp hours and cold cranking amps. So there's also this EN number, which also relates to the amp hours. I'm just going to use the amp hours, and if required, we'll convert that to cold cranking amps. The CCA stands for cold cranking amps, AH, ampere hours. If you need to convert, then what you'll take is the amp hours times 7.5 to get cold cranking amps. Or if your battery has cold cranking amps listed, then you'll do cold cranking amps divided by 7.5 to give you amp hours. And we're going to start with just the quick test. Hit that, and it's going to say, please input the amp hours value on the label of the battery. So I need to come here and put 95 because that's my amp hours. Now I'll go ahead and hit enter. And for the quick test, let's go ahead and testing the battery. It's good. It does say that I need to get recharged because you can see I've got 12.35 volts, 850 cold cranking amps. It's the capacity is 100% there. The charge is low, but I haven't driven this car in a while either. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive this around, get it charged up, and we'll redo this charge. So we'll do it again. With the internal resistance, if you have between 0 and 5 milliohms, that's a very good battery in good health. 5 to 10 milliohms is considered to be in good condition. Anywhere around 10 to 30 milliohms is considered to be in poor condition, but you may be able to use a desulfonation device to restore some of the health to it. And anything over 30 is considered a dead battery that needs to be replaced. I have charged the battery, and now we're going to do this test again. So we're just going to do the quick test at first. 95 amp hours, still there. So now we're going to test it. This is just testing the internals of the battery itself. And you can see that the health is 100%, which is good. The charge is 100%, 12.8 volts. And the internal resistance is 3.19 milliohms, which is good. It has a 690 amp rating and tells me I have a good battery. Next, we're going to do a battery in vehicle test. So let's start that. We have a battery test, which is going to be similar to the quick test. Now it's going to tell you to turn the lights on, then take headlights on for about 10 seconds, and then turn the headlights off. And this just gets rid of any surface charges that may exist with the battery. So I'm going to do that. So my lights are now on. I'm going to leave them on for now, again, about 10 seconds. Now we're back here. The headlights were on for about 10 seconds and then turned off. Now next, I do have a regular flooded battery, so you can select the battery type if you have something different. And this pretty much gives us the same thing we had before. You'll notice that the internal resistance is lower by a little bit, so that's good. And we have a good battery. So now let's move on to the next test. In-vehicle test, cranking test. So it says for me to start the engine, and that's what I'll do. After the vehicle has started, it will give me the time that it took to start and the status, which is cranking is normal. And so next we're going to move on to the charging test. So we're going to go down to charge, hit enter there. And we're just going to go on next. So now it's going to tell me to increase the engine RPM to 2,500 to 3,000 RPM and leave it there for about 5 seconds. So we've done that, and now I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And it will be testing the charging, and it says voltage high. It's giving me a good charging, so I'm pretty happy with my charging system. One of the things that I like about the Ancel system battery tester is the ability to review the data. So basically I can look at my battery test, shows me a good battery, my battery cranking, shows cranking normal, and my charging tests. So once I perform all the tests, I can review them. On this cover plate, what I've done is I've put the internal resistance at 3 microohms and today's date. And what this will do is it'll let me see if I check the battery again in 6 months or 8 months, if the internal resistance has changed. If it starts increasing, I'll know I need to look to desulfonate it or something like that just to ensure battery health. 46% of all car breakdowns, according to a 2022 study, are due to battery issues. So ensuring the health of your battery, knowing the condition of your battery, is going to go a long way towards ensuring that you have trouble-free motoring. Having a good battery tester, such as this Ancel battery tester, is going to be an important thing. It's easy to check, particularly if you don't have to get under the seat like I do in the Mercedes. If it's just a matter of lifting the hood and connecting it to terminals, then there's no reason at all why you shouldn't check the battery on a regular basis. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. You gained a little bit of knowledge. in terms of battery and battery testing. And if it has, please click the like and subscribe button. That does help me continue to do these types of videos for you. And happy and safe motoring.